My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. In this video we're going to look at the center of any greenhouse, and that is the potting bench. Now it sounds very grand having a potting bench, but having one of the correct size with a few basic ingredients lets you undertake jobs that really aren't that difficult, but you can do them at the drop of a hat. You don't need a setup, you don't need to clear a space. So what I want to do here is just share with you what I've got. And this bench has got a back to it and a top ledge. This top ledge is invaluable because I can store pots, I can store fertilizer, I've got clippers and scissors and a knife, a few plants that are in the hospital. These were little seedlings that got potted on and I can take a close look at them. But this top shelf lets you keep this bottom shelf just for plants and potting mix. Now I've pulled down a range of items here that I'm going to go through with you to show you how this works. But this is 2 feet deep, this is 6 feet long, and as you can see I've got it set up on an L shape. So these are some plants that were divided and potted on over the last few months, and they're very close to where I'm going to be working. But this is for potting on plants that I want to put into a larger container, take cuttings and put those into a growing medium, and also sow seed. And then when the cuttings and the seed grow and they're in the other part of the greenhouse, they come back here and they would get potted on. So let me go through with you what I've got and the sort of things that you might need to do if you want to have a potting bench. Now you may not have a greenhouse, you may have a conservatory, you may have a very large window on one side with another window next to it, and that could also serve as a potting bench. What you need to do is make sure that if you spill water and if you spill potting mix, it's not the end of the world, because it will happen. So if you've got a nice beautiful hardwood floor, don't be tempted to put a potting bench in there, because the water and the potting mix will get all over the place. So let's get started. First things first, and not to be in any way undervalued, and that is a sieve. I've got two sieves. Bought this one, made this one, and these turn old potting mix. When I say old, I don't mean used, I mean potting mix that's needs a little bit of life brought back into it, and you can add stuff to it. So what we have here is potting mix fresh out of the bag, and you see it's quite wet, which means there's a hole in it, it's taken on water, and it's just a little bit clumpy. Now this is too big to go through here, but it would absolutely go through here. So I can scoop this on and I can just work it through. In fact, let me just do this. So these are all the clods and clumps that I don't want, that if you squeeze they will break. But there's some bark in here and a few other big pieces. But what you're left with is this nice, friable, completely uncompacted. This is much better to use when you put it into a pot, making sure that you don't squeeze it down. So I cannot stress the importance of having some sort of sieve. You can put metal mesh over it, put on a couple of layers, which is what I did here. I use this all the time. Now the next layer is this one. This is incredibly fine and really useful if you want to do a mix for seedlings. So what you've gone through first, so this is what went through the first sieve. And if we get a pot like that, not a lot goes through, but you'll see the magic, what does come through and how we can use it. And for seeds, it's just first rate. Now there's not much in here, but you can see how fine this is. And for sowing seeds, that is exactly what you want. You don't need much of this. You put this into a pot this size, you could fill it up with this half full and then fill it up with this on top, and you'd get your perfect blend to put your seeds in. Now let's say we want to take this a step further. There's various additives that we can put in our potting mix. One of them is perlite. I bought this bag. Perlite is a wonderful way to open up the soil. Let me show you. So very, very light. And when you mix this with your growing media, it increases the oxygen, which keeps the soil fresh. If it gets wet and cold, it can start to smell. That's anaerobic conditions. That's bad for any plants. So this lets it drain freely, but also stay moisture retentive. But the increased oxygen to the roots is really important. So what you can do is make yourself a custom mix. What we're going to do is use this with our trusty scooper. Add a little bit of your perlite. It still amazes me how well this works. Being able to take a standard potting mix and then breathe a bit of life into it. And nothing ever goes to waste. You can just put that back on your potting bench. And here we have our premix. Now you don't need to do any more than, say, 15%. 20% absolute maximum. So that would be 4 pots of potting mix to 1 pot of perlite. And that gives you this very, very light, easy mix that you can then repot cuttings, repot seedlings. Then what you can do is add slowly fertilizer to it. And now you've got the holy grail. This really is the best stuff. Rich in oxygen, it's got fertilizer, it's completely uncompressed, and plants just love this stuff. So this is why having a few of these basic ingredients really does go a long way to helping you have more successful plants. So what we've talked about there is perlite with slow release fertilizer with a sifted potting mix. So that's option 1. The next option is to use this. And I hear you say, what have you got there, Ian? Well, this is vermiculite. It's a little old-fashioned, very similar to perlite in its application. Some say that this is slightly more alkaline, and you can get different strengths of this. Some of it's quite coarse, some of it's quite fine. But this is a volcanic ash, I believe it's a volcanic ash that's expanded, and it absorbs water, and it also keeps the potting mix open like perlite. They both have different attributes, and I've seen some conflicting claims as to which one's more suitable. If you put this fine grade with, let me see, this fine mix for seedlings, that is amazing. I've got some really choice seedlings that I'm growing right now. These plants were bought as seed, they are actually growing, and I attribute it to sifting it through this and then adding 10 to 15% of this, and these plants are now growing. More about that in future videos. So the same as the perlite, the vermiculite you can use to add to a blend and use it to repot with. So let's just recap. Coarse sieve, fine sieve. Very, very important. We've got vermiculite, we've got perlite, 2 additives. Our next additive is really good for cuttings, and that is sand. It's not anything fancy. You don't want to use builder's sand. You want to make sure that it has some sort of horticultural component, that it has no extra lime or anything else in there. And you'll see how fine this is. If you add this as a top dressing to seeds, they can push through this very, very easily because it doesn't squash down. So I've done some cuttings in, let me see if I can find that tray. I did some cuttings in one of these. Now I called up Johnny's, there'll be a link in the description, and they gave me permission to use this. This is a 38 cell plug tray. This is fantastic. You can get them 72, but they're quite small and they dry out. You can get them bigger, but they take up lots of space. But 38 cells, there's a dome that you can put over it, and that helps keep it nice and humid. These are remarkable. So having some sand and the sifted potting mix, and you can add in a little bit of perlite, a little bit of vermiculite, and then you fill these individual cells, you are now set up for cutting success. These are great for cuttings. You can do seeds. I've also done seeds in them, but I'm really pleased that these are now available, and I bought 5 of these online from Johnny's. So thank you, Johnny's. This is absolutely wonderful. I hope more homeowners go this way when they want to grow things like tomatoes, because all you need is 3 tomatoes. You might sow 5, but you just need 3, and then you can have a different variety, and then you could have eggplant, and then you could have peppers, and all growing, starting in one tray to minimize waste. So this is fantastic. Let's see, what else have we got? We talked about the slow release fertilizer. This has got a ratio of 14, 14, 14, I believe. It's quite strong. Sorry, 15, 9, 12. It's quite strong, but it's slow release, so you don't overload the plant with too much fertilizer. I will often use multiple fertilizers on the same plant to really give that plant what it needs. If it can't take it in one form, it can take it in the other. So this is really good. Then I have liquid feed. I use this. I put a couple of capfuls in a gallon of water, and when I'm watering, I will water 15 different plants, and they'll just get a little bit of food to help them get going. So this is really good. Let me see what else we got. Oh, and then 10-10-10. Now let me share this with you. Let me come over here. Here we have a fig plant, and I've got a little interloper in there. I think it's a sunflower. No idea where it came from. But when these were repotted, I mixed up a little bit of 10-10 fertilizer with my potting mix, and that went in not quite halfway, but it also went around the edge. So in potting this up, rather than using the liquid feed or the slow release, I went for 10-10-10. It's got a little bit more horsepower, and it will give the plant food for the next 2 to 3 months. And I really want these to put on growth. They were potted on 5 weeks ago, and now they're ready to get going. So you want to match your fertilizer with your subject, rather than just staying with one fertilizer and only using that. So that's fertilizers out of the way. Put that here. I used to be quite disparaging about premix control for insects and fungicide. They're kind of expensive, $10, $15 for a little premix bottle. But the problem is, you're rarely ever going to go and mix up what you need when you want it. What I'm trying to say is that I have this here with my plant, and if I see something, I reach for this, give my plant a couple of sprays, make sure it's out of direct sunshine, and then a week later I'm doing something else. But because I have it pre-mixed and ready to go, I'm more likely to use it, rather than, oh, I'll come back and I'll add that to the list and I'll do it in 4 days' time. I want to nip the problem in the bud, so to speak, and having a pre-mixed insecticide, fungicide is very, very useful. Now, I'm not a fan of these, and I don't throw them outside willy-nilly, but I do place them in pots. So if you've got your little precious seedling that's growing and it's putting out new shoots, and you know it's susceptible to slugs, you can take 3 or 4 pellets, individual pellets. You don't want to tip the whole thing up, and you can just place them in that pot around the edge and you'll protect your plant. So this is conscientious, careful use to not have slugs and snails take over your plants. I use this intermittently, but again, very happy to have it in this setup. Next, we have a little jar of rooting hormone. If you're doing cuttings, a little bit of this goes a long way. Some people love it, some people hate it. I think a lot of it is overused. More is not better. But having it here on the potting bench means that should I be taking cuttings, I can lay my hands on this easily. And then we've got the trusty sprayer. This is by far the best thing to water small plants. Obviously, you can spray it. I will frequently, and I think I've shown this to you before, take this out, put my finger over the end, and I will water plants by dribbling water, very controlled around the plant, making sure that I don't overwater it, don't underwater it, and don't wash the plant away. So having these available and in your potting bench is an absolute must. And what you can do is you can put a little bit of soluble fertilizer in here. I'm talking a quarter of a capful, just so it's a mild little plant latte. And when you put this on your plant, it goes into the potting mix, then the plant can get that nutrient. You have to have clippers. If you don't have clippers, it's an uphill battle. These are Felcos, absolutely worth investing in. And then we have at the top here, nice to have scissors, very important. Nice to have plant labels. Sometimes it's useful to have a very sharp knife. And then I've got a range of pots. And you might say, why all the different pots? What is it that you need these for? Now, if you have a seedling growing in these pots and it starts to put out growth and the leaves are getting larger and bigger and there's more count, after a certain period of time, the rate of evaporation of this plant is going to exceed the volume of potting mix and the water it can hold. So it'll keep drying out. You'll keep watering it, but it'll keep drying out. You need to go to the next size at the right time. This is much more stable. But inevitably, it too, the plant will get a size where the foliage and the crown is so big that it'll drain the moisture inside this pot. And then you want to go up to the next size. And this is called a 4-inch. This is a 6-inch pot, and this is an 8-inch pot. Now I just want to show you this example to impress upon you the importance of matching pot size to your plant. So my question is, how many pots of this volume are in here? Let's try. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would probably say 4.5. So you've got 4.5 times the water holding capacity, oxygen holding capacity, and nutrient holding capacity in an 8-inch pot. I think the best route to go is just practice. Get yourself some 4-inch pots, put seedlings in here, put cuttings, potted on cuttings that come out of that plug tray, and you'll see, they'll tell you when they're ready to be planted. And one of the tricks is to do this. This is a rhodium. It's a type of geranium. It's not really, but it has a similar flower to a geranium. And what happens is it was planted, repotted into here from a 4-inch pot about 2 weeks ago. Look at those roots. So that is what we're looking for. This will stay in this pot. This will be planted out probably in the next 4 weeks. And having your potting bench set up to have all of these things in one place allows you to come here with the plant, seedlings, seeds, and just get on with it, rather than having to try and corral it all together every time you want to do something. That's it. I've got nothing else to share with you with regard to a potting bench. I've wanted one for decades. Set this up 2 years ago, used it a lot last year, and I've used it so much this year. It's an absolute joy to come out to this space and lose yourself with your plants. So on that note, thank you for watching. Set up a potting bench, get yourself some basic ingredients, and have fun. Bye for now.